you have to be the best ever cheerleader to yourself more than anybody else in the world, because at the end of the day, everybody's got their own thing, and the only person that's going to push you to your limits or to what you want to succeed is yourself. And so you have to celebrate the small victories every single day. Look at yourself in the mirror and accept yourself and just keep pushing yourself forward, because at the end of the day, it's you versus you, and you have to push yourself, because no one else is going to do it. Not your mom, not your dad, not your spouse, not your kids, whoever. They'll applaud you when you finish the current, they'll applaud you when you're at the finish line, but before you get to the finish line, they're not going to care most of the time, even though we want them to. So you're going to have to push yourself. So be the best cheerleader you can be to yourself, and and just continue pushing forward.
Welcome to the In Factor, conversations with entrepreneurs who started, stumbled, and succeeded. I'm Rebecca White, and with me today is Jay Fulgencio. Jay is the founder of LearnGenics and an academic by training, and we're really looking forward to digging in and learning more about all the work he's doing with entrepreneurial mindset. And hearing about his entrepreneurial journey as well. So, Jay, thank you for joining me today on the In Factor.
Rebecca, thank you. It's such an honor to be a part of this. I really thank you.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to someone else who is really dedicating their life to this whole thing that we call an entrepreneurial mindset. And I'm very curious. I grew up with an entrepreneurial mom, and we didn't call it entrepreneurship at the time, but I learned an entrepreneurial mindset from her. So I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about your background and how you got to this point as an entrepreneur and an educator.
So my journey with entrepreneurial mindset actually began in my childhood through my family, actually my external family. So my mom and my dad, they're both actually both of them come from a household of 12 children, right? My mom is like number 11 out of 12, and then my dad is like number 7. He's in the middle. I think he's number 7 or 6 out of 12. And so my dad's side was very industrial. They're, blue collar workers, farmers, and, that kind of mindset, and working in factories. But my mom's side, the majority of them are small business owners, majority in Mexico. So when in the summer, when I was a child, we would every summer we would go to Mexico. So I would see my uncles, by marriage to my aunts, my mom's sisters. They had their own small businesses. So one had a bicycle shop, other one selling cars, auto parts, and such. And one has a luxury tour bus company in Mexico. So I saw their style of being, like their mindset of how they thought, how they talked, how they maneuvered, and it's like that kind of, as a child, I saw that, and that kind of really started me to build, like, how do you work your schedule? You don't have a 9 to 5? Like, how does that, like, how is, like, and you know how to sell like that? That started pumping the engines for me for an entrepreneurial mindset, which has led me today to, I'm deeply passionate about the topic, what it is, what it's about, and how one can instill an entrepreneurial mindset, not having to necessarily launch a company, but just within their own organization as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I remember a few years back a study that looked at the most entrepreneurial communities, and there are certain cultures that where entrepreneurship is really, a fundamental part of the way of thinking about the world. And a lot of I know the Mexican culture, a lot of the South American, Latin American cultures, heavy focus on entrepreneurship. And it's great. We both kind of learned this as children from role models, and role models make a big difference. And it's really interesting with students that I work with, because some of them come from cultures where entrepreneurship is not the way that their parents think about the future for their children. So tell me a little bit more about what LearnGenics is, and how did you start this company?
So yeah, so LearnGenics is a go-to destination for cutting-edge learning and development solutions. So of course, tailor solutions to drive growth and success. So we have professional continuing education courses through our partner MindEdge. We do instructional design. whiteboard animation production. Of course, we're partnered with Mobile Mind, which is a cutting edge mobile learning and development platform for K 12. And also, we are a Cypher Learning LMS reseller. And so basically, it's really, this journey of continuous learning and development, how we can help organizations customize that to make better solutions for their learning needs. And so, how I came about, so my experience has been, I have a very unique experience, kind of that, it wasn't necessarily built. It was just, I took advantage of the opportunities that lay in front of me, the entrepreneurial mindset,
The
right?
entrepreneurial mindset,
Right?
right?
Take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you. And so I got my start. So when I was a grad student at Oklahoma State University, I had the opportunity to teach my own section of American government. At that time, I was master's in political science. And so that was my first start in higher education teaching. And ever since then, I've been teaching as an adjunct in higher ed since that time. This was like 2010, 2011. So over my years of teaching and of course research, later on getting a PhD and a master's in entrepreneurship and a PhD in education, through my experiences in that, through my teaching experience, all that kind of stuff culminated my experiences and my passion for this, for Learngenics. How I came about the name, it was just one of those eureka moments. You're sleeping, all of a sudden you're like, I got it, and I just wake up and I write it down real quick before I forget it. And so that was just, again, that was just a culmination of experiences from the opportunities that I took that lay in front of me.
Yeah. So you went. Did you start this company right after you graduated with your doctorate, or is this something that you did? You've always done as sort of a side gig. I mean, side hustles are a big deal today, and we have a lot of people doing that.
Yeah, not after my PhD. Now, my dream was always to become a full blown tenure track professor, right? And of course, right now is, not to delve too much, but as we know what's going on in academia, like those opportunities are not as what like 30 years ago. So it came about later on, a few years later. I tried to do something, delve into it, didn't work out really well. So I had to pivot and work something better. So going on 3 years now or so. And so, yeah, it's starting as as what we call a side hustle, because I've learned through experiences that either you have to raise a ton of money, which can be difficult because people don't necessarily give money to entrepreneurs unless it's like the next Uber, right? They're not going to give a ton of money to companies, or you got to get a big loan. And some people, sometimes they fall into these big loan debts of their business, or they dip into their 401k. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. So I'll slowly, gradually work it up. And so that's how I started Learngenics and continue to grow it.
Yeah. Yes, and you've been doing that. You said for 3 years now.
Yeah, I was trying to grow it. Yeah, so working
And
on
you've
this.
built that through partnerships, it sounds like. You've got some partnerships, and who's your primary client?
So
Or
right
what?
now yeah, sorry. So one of the things that with LearnJax is building partnerships and pivoting. What I mean by building partnership, like Cypher Learning, being a reseller with them, and with Mobile Mind Learning, of course, being a partner with them. So that's the things that I've been pivoting. How can I develop and bring those partnerships together? So we worked with organizations in the past, like the Oklahoma Council on Economic Education, the Minnesota LADC organization. So those type of organizations, of course, working with them and other, business to consumer, just people buying courses. So that's what's been really working. So pivoting, of course, right now it's in the pivoting factor, trying to get more into the B2B side, the business to business instead of just business to consumer side.
So your client is typically a corporation, a larger corporation or a small business or
No, small to medium size
uh-huh.
organizations is the typical client. So.
And so let's talk about that a little bit. What do you, if I were a small business client and I wanted to work with LearnGenix, what would that look like? What kinds of assistance could you provide me? You mentioned several things.
Yes.
Um,
So yeah, so the first thing I do is like have a conversation. What is it that you're seeking? Are you seeking courses for your employees? Have you designed a course, or are you seeking the design of a training or a course? It's just asking the questions. What is it that you're seeking, to get the conversation started, and then from there to see if LearnGenics is the best solution for you. One thing, of course, if LearnGenics can't provide that for you, then of course probably refer you to somebody else that I may know, or see, hey, you know what, like this is probably not something that LearnGenics can do, or solve for you, because I'm not also going to take on something that I don't have experience in, or I cannot do, just to take the business as well. I don't want that kind of thing. But yeah, so for example, the Minnesota Latino Economic Development Council, they were more interested, like on the whiteboard animation, and it's like, oh, how did you do that? What did you do? And of course, did some Spanish training courses that we have as well. So we have like a folder of Spanish training courses. These are like a typical like accounting 101 type of, like, employee 101 type courses in Spanish. So we put on a platform from them on Moodle, and so for their clientele, that they work with, to here's this training course so you can take it. So
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine, that that's a large that population of Spanish-speaking, employees is growing, and I can imagine that you would be a great fit for that with your background. So I'm curious about, I know you and I both, have used something called the entrepreneurial mindset profile. You've also used the innovator mindset assessment. So, how do you incorporate these kinds of assessments into the training that you do?
So the entrepreneurial mindset profile assessment is really more towards, right now it's on one-on-one basis. So I've had individuals who were interested in taking the assessment to kind of measure, not necessarily in the sense like, hey, I want to start a business, but necessarily like, okay, I'm in career. Where am I? What skills do I have in the trajectory of, comparing myself between a corporate manager and an entrepreneur? So where do I fall, and what am I lacking, and what I need to gain on, and what are my strengths? And I look at that entrepreneurial mindset profile assessment more. It's like, okay, you're the doer, and how well do you work with a team? Like, or what skills could you contribute to a team, and what skills, if you're part of a team, what skills do you need so they can contribute to your team? Like if you're the leader, or you're part of that team. Now, the underwater mindset, on the other hand, excuse me, more so on the individual basis, like how do I become more innovative? Where am I at? Am I willing to cross the boundaries, or where do I fall within that innovation skill? So much more as an individual.
Yeah, so it sounds like with those, you're doing coaching mostly, and career coaching, and helping clients, individual clients rather than businesses.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily. Well, you could say career coaching, but I don't want to come. Like, I just like, listen. This is what you're at, and this is how to help you, assist you. Because I don't, I think the career coaching is, it could be part of their portfolio, and that's what I say. Like, listen, use this as part of your portfolio. I don't know where you want to go 5 years from now, but this is where you're at right now, and think about where you want to go. I always say, we work in like, it's very hard for someone to not work in a team in today's society. I mean, you can't. I mean, a job where you're not working with a team is very minuscule. I mean, I can't think of, well, maybe a truck driver, but even then, they have to work with a team. Um, so how can you work with a team better moving on in the future? Like, if you're gonna hire somebody, that's why I like working with managers on this one, because it's like, okay, your weakness is this. Maybe you should hire someone who has that strength. That way, it's a better team. Don't hire too many people, or have somebody on your team that has too many of one quality, because you may be lacking something else.
Mhm, mhm. Helping them see where the gaps are, and
Yeah,
looking to fill that in. We do have a tendency to want to surround ourselves with people like us, and
yeah,
that's not always the most beneficial thing to
no,
do.
no.
So I'm really curious, I've worked with corporations and medium-sized businesses, but I've also found over the years that it's challenging for a lot of companies to commit themselves to programming like this, training and education for their employees, because they're especially small businesses because they're, trying every day just to get
Yeah.
the work done basically. So, what have you seen an upward trend in interest in training and education? Do you feel like employees are demanding or asking for this more? What are you seeing with respect to especially small and even medium sized companies and their ability to actually provide training for their employees?
That's a great question. I think at small businesses, you're at the helm of being the first to go cut. I mean, a small business, right? They're probably generating 250, 500, 750,000 annual revenue, which one to may seem a lot, but then you think about all the costs that go into it, especially what state they're operating in. And so training may not be the first thing on their mind to have. And if so, they're like, well, I could just get it for free on YouTube or, or Udemy or something of some other training source. So I won't see necessarily huge benefit. Or if there is like a grant awarded with it, once that grant money's gone, it's like, okay. And so, yes, there is a downside. There are like small to medium sized companies, don't want to, you know, invest in this particular asset. But I always say like outweigh what would you prefer? Would you rather prefer hire somebody on the outside, spend 50, 60, 70 grand, and you talk about pay, you talk about training, the amount of money you're going to invest in this individual who will probably later on quit or resign? Or would you rather spend a couple thousand just to train your entire organization and take a few hours out of the week so that they can be better employees for the future and grow with it themselves? It's like, so would you rather spend this or would you rather spend that? And so that at times is a challenge in and outweighing the competing factors. What's more important to me right now than tomorrow? So it's like a lot of business owners don't see the tremendous value of these training courses that that can definitely benefit their organization. I've talked with other individuals in a similar field, and they run into that situation as well. It's like, I'm trying to do this or build this for myself or for the company that I have, and it's like they run into those challenges of people just not biting into it because they just don't see they see the benefit, or it's like the first thing when the business goes sour a little bit, the first thing that gets cut is training because they won't see the ultimate benefit, when in reality, it's the benefit. A lot of times, people resign or quit because they feel like they're not being trained properly, they're not being equipped properly. Other than maybe some organization, like for example, like sexual harassment training, that's required in many industries. And so apart from that, unless it's like required or mandated by law or some regulation, you gotta really, sell the value that yes, okay, yeah, you're investing $5,000 or 10 or 15, whatever the cost may be. But think about the outcomes that, now you have a fully trained staff or employees who can actually do X, Y, Z and not feel frustrated and then quit. And now you got to go back into now you gotta go find somebody else. Now you gotta do the whole process again, which can take weeks, if not months. And you gotta train that person, spend another 50, 60, 70 grand. So it's like, what do you want to invest in?
Yeah, yeah. So what I hear you saying is that it's a great retention tool, keeping
Yes.
people,
Yeah.
and then cross training. It sounds like getting people cross trained so that they can advance in the company or move from position to position,
Yes.
which makes work more interesting, right, for most people.
Yeah, like we don't, especially in industries like right now, we live in a ever changing global society where things are changing consistently. Like now we have AI tools like ChatGPT. Okay, how do I use ChatGPT in the workforce properly? And so things are continuously changing, and with that, you need to evolve and you need to retrain employees. Like there was an article by the Harvard Business Review a few months ago about the constant reskilling and how AI plays a role in that. And so you're just constantly have to reskill folks all the time, and no matter what, it's just part, whether you're a small business, large, medium sized, even corporate America, you're just gonna have to just reskill employees all the time. It's just we live in a society where we have to.
Yeah, I think for the business owners listening to this, probably many of them are thinking about that because, there are going to be a lot of jobs replaced
Mhm.
by technology, but the new jobs that are created by technology are probably going to be even greater, right? But
Yes.
we have to understand how to use it, and that kind of leads me to another question about technology because I had a speaker in my class the other day, and he said, all of your businesses are technology businesses. Now, what else do you do? And basically, he had built his company, which is they sell products. He had built a technology platform which enabled him to scale his business through franchising. And what he basically offered to competitors that he was acquiring was, or in his franchisees was technology. So, how I guess my question is, do you is a lot of the training that you're getting that people are asking for in the technology space, and how do you use technology to do what you do?
So the in regards to using technology, so the ones that of course I was asked before was the kind of the Spanish training courses. Not necessarily too much about that style is because with not mobile mind, sorry, with Mind Edge, the course we saw with Mind Edge is more necessarily like management, leadership, project management. There is an AI for managers course, so it's mostly kind of those type of skills, not necessarily how to learn machines. But I haven't been solely requested on that, but I know that's a continuous topic of conversation that some folks in different from different organizations are actually building out and seeing a growth for that. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head is like how to properly use AI tools for the workplace. And right now, it's such a new environment that it's like, okay, how do we do it now? Of course, I see on LinkedIn like somebody puts up like a cheat sheet, how to properly use AI or how to ask the right things. That right now is the training that I get, right? Like that's the training. I know I'm enrolled in some AI course too as well to make sure that I'm up to par and up to skill. Even myself, I always say if I'm willing to do the continuous learning myself, like why not you? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we're all learning a lot about AI, and a lot of people are nervous about it, but there's a lot of tremendous opportunity, I think, with AI as well. Do you use technology for your teaching? Is it an online platform, or do you do most of yours in person?
So I mostly teach online. There is sometimes face to face, but so right now it's just mostly online. Of course, aside from the learning management system platforms. I did use Satori, which is a really cool technology platform, where it's basically it's like a mix of PowerPoint with Prezi in a sense, and but you can also have like discussion board in there. You can add videos and all these other great things. So I did use that platform for a while. But I always say like I am a YouTube enthusiast using that, but finding the right videos for the right content. So that's just some of the platforms that I've used. There's a lot more tools that I'm familiar with that I use as well. Apple tools for the classroom, but it's just using the right tool for the right consumer base, not consumer base, for the right learner is the key. You can't, when you're using technology in the classroom, you have to make sure that whoever your students are or your learners, like it's the proper tool to use for that learning environment.
Yeah. Have you ever used podcasts as part of your learning tools?
I've given the links, but I've never like I've hey, here's a podcast link, like, but I've never like recorded particular for a
Yeah.
class.
It's the reason I ask is as you know, I use podcasts
Yeah.
as for learning, and it's really interesting because even in consulting, I'm finding that consultants that employees enjoy podcasts. And if you look at the research, a lot of people are learning through podcasts as well on YouTube and audio as well.
Well, I do what they call vlogs, but I don't know why, but I prefer the video portion, like this, like just the because sometimes I'm a little animated at times, and so I know I have a YouTube channel, Dr. J Real Talk, and I've done stuff like I use open educational resources to create content, and so it's up there. Which I put up an entrepreneurship course from an OER entrepreneurship course, and so it got a lot of hits too. But I'm guessing people want to learn about that. So that's the platform that I use when it comes to teaching. I was like, go watch that and subscribe, not just for the students, but for everybody else around the world.
So, that kind of brings up an interesting question. Do you find that employers are nervous about their employees if you're doing entrepreneurial mindset training with them? Are they nervous that they'll leave, or have employers started to embrace the value of an entrepreneurial mindset for employees?
No, because people have to understand, and I think a lot of people get it wrong. Like launching your own business is the greatest thing on earth. It is probably not. It's one of the most daunting, scariest things. And a lot of people don't have the tenacity. They have the skills, right? They probably do have the skills, but they don't have the stomach to endure the pain and the grueling. Like I remember, for example, to answer your question, no, because not everyone's just going to leave and all of a sudden they're going to start their own business venture because they don't have the capital, or they don't have the stomach to endure the pain. Um, it's like you're carrying a baby and it's your business, and a lot of people are going to call it ugly before it becomes beautiful, right? And it's like, can you endure that pain of them calling your baby ugly, which is your business, right? And a lot of people can't stomach that. They're too busy doing other things, and people are more complacent of 9 to 5. Like I get my paycheck at 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever you get paid. They're more complacent than taking the risk of like, I don't know if I'm going to get paid, but I got to pay these other people first. So not necessarily. It's like, and anybody whoever's listening to this, if you're thinking about doing that, I think it's a great way because you not people are like, if you have 20 employees, for example, not all 20 of them are all of a sudden going to say, you know what, I scored really high and I'm going to go launch my own business. Yeah, they'll probably be back pretty sooner rather than later because it's just a whole different type of thing to launch your own business. And like I was to folks, like, don't be afraid to use this. You can also use this as a facilitation tool for your group to see again where are our dynamics and how can we grow as a company or organization.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I've been teaching entrepreneurship for many, many years, and a number of years ago, I taught in Cincinnati and had a lot of employees from bigger corporate environments like Procter and Gamble, for example, which is headquartered there,
Yeah,
and organizations like Procter and Gamble back in many years ago, back in the day, I'll date myself, would not pay for the graduate courses in entrepreneurship.
yeah.
They've come full circle, I think, and they, as well as most corporations, recognize the value of an entrepreneurial mindset, which, as we talked about, is the ability to recognize opportunities, taking action, and persevering past failure, and it's very valuable inside organizations, I think, as well as out. But I was just curious to see if you were finding that mindset had changed as well.
No, yeah, and I think I just want to say one last thing. I think that's great that I know corporate America is taking that, and we call them entrepreneurs, right? The entrepreneurs within an organization. You definitely need them because it's a very competitive environment, even for corporate America. It's cutthroat. Like for example, like the breakfast market, you got like Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, Wendy's, everybody competing against each other for the breakfast market now. So it's like how to become innovative and like making sure that we have our own market share. How does our research and development department like become more innovative and making sure that the next product is we dominate that. So you do need that kind of mindset.
Yeah, and
Corporate.
even wanting employees to take ownership of what they do, because that's what an entrepreneurial mindset does. It takes ownership, I think.
Yeah, and Bloomberg actually did an awesome job. This was years ago. They did two videos, one on Dunkin' Donuts and one on Marriott, of how they're innovative in the sense like they have their own research and development and they developing things like, for example, the video said that Dunkin' Donuts, their R&D, like we're doing right now, 2 years from now, this what we're doing right now is going to be on the market in 2 years from now. Marriott, they're working on right now as we speak on something that's going to be out in the market in a couple years for the new hotel. So it's like you got to have that those people with innovative mindset, entrepreneurial mindset within the organization to think about, okay, people are going to get bored of this. What's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to that small business owner that might be listening,
Yeah.
and maybe they're starting to buy in a little bit to this idea. They need some education and training for their staff. How would you recommend a busy small business owner get started thinking about things like education and empowering their employees through some training and support? What would be the first step?
So I think the first step would have a casual conversation. Say, hey, what's your goal? What do you intend to do? Who's your employees? What's your market? Get all that kind of one-on-one basis to see what they intend to do. Now, if it's a small business owner, for example, who has got like 20 employees and really no budget, and it says, I want to create courses, and I go, let's rethink at that. Like, let's have a course because it's probably out there already, and I may have those in my bank that we could work on. Because if you're a small business owner, developing courses is going to cost you a lot of money and time consumption. So it really depends on the goal, what you want to do, and you have to see the value that for your organization. Do you want to retain your current employees for the next couple of years, or do you want to consistently change them out every single few months? Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of small business owners who complain about the high turnover rate. And so, apart from probably leadership and all that, like how can we train these employees to stay with you and learn, to grow, right? And I think that every employer has its duty, as much as the employee has a duty to give its best. The employer should have a duty to how can I train you and how can I get the best out of you for the 2, 3, 4 years that I have with you to make this company successful, as well as yourself, because the employee has to also see value in it. And if the employer, like the small business owners, see value in training to give to this employee, who, if I learn this, I'm going to grow as an individual, not only for myself, but for the company. Therefore, 3, 4 years, maybe the small business can't retain me anymore. I have grown so much that now I can go on and do bigger things and then train the next person to come on up, give the most I can, and then move forward. Because that's how I would see it, and tell the small business owner it's a win-win situation for both of you, because one wants to learn and you can give it to them. Look for courses that we have through Learngenics, to make sure that both parties are succeeding.
So, would you recommend assessments as a starting point also, or talking to employees, or is it better for more of a conversation with a learning provider like yourself or some other learning provider first?
I think it would start a conversation and see the assessment needs, like what is it that the organization is seeking, in terms of learning, right? If you wanted to learn how to operate a big machine, that forever is like, okay, maybe you had to talk with elsewhere. But if you're like looking for leadership management and other types of skills in that field, or project management, of course, let's see the assessment. Let's see what employees want. Who are your employees? Like, what's the educational level as well? Things in that nature as well. How much time do they have for this as well? That's another thing. Like, how much time can the employees dedicate to continuing education during the week? Is there time for them, and what's their access? Do they have access to computer? Do they have access to a phone? I'm pretty sure almost everybody has access to some type of mobile phone, smartphone, which is the great thing about the courses we offer. They're mobile access, mobile friendly, which is thinking about the consumer as well, because most people are more than likely will have a smartphone than a laptop. Not that they won't have a laptop, but it's just the access to it. And so, doing that, of course, the time commitment as well to think about that as well.
Have you found that most, companies, provide on the clock time for this kind of training, or do they expect it, on your own time, or how does that work
It
usually?
just depends on the company and organization. To me, a person who's going to take this serious would provide some type of allowance during the work week to do this training. I can't remember what it was an article, but like, they're saying like the 40-hour work week. Do people really spend 40 hours working the whole time? Right. Let's set aside the time for the chit chat and all the gossipy things that go on and the bathroom breaks and all that. But there's time in like where you can set aside 2 hours a week or so, or an hour a week even. Okay, take this course for an hour a week, and there is time. It's just, again, how you make time for it. Now that won't apply in every industry, for example, right? Like construction workers, that's a whole different dynamic where, sometimes they do have training, but they have to go off site and do other things. And it's not like you're not going to see a construction worker in the middle of constructing taking an online course on their phone. Like, it's going to be
Sure.
dangerous to everyone around them. But again, it just depends on the industry, especially in the white collar industry.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you think about these programs and this training, have you found that most of the people involved in the training are able to complete it, or do you find that they often, people start training and they don't finish training? I mean, is there a challenge with that?
Well, the great thing about the courses we offer at LearnGenics is that they're timed, meaning you have a certain amount of days to complete, or else you lose access to it. So you pay for it. So, depending on the course, and usually the courses are 90-day access or 180 days, depending on it. Or if it's a certification, it's more. It's like close to a year, because of the amount of courses in there. And so when you pay for something and it's time locked, and when I mean time locked, like you have a certain amount of days to complete it, you're more than likely going to rush to complete because you paid for it, or someone paid for it, someone's rushing you to get it done. Well, like a lot of these courses, which I'm not going to name them, but it's like, it's free. There's no push for it. Oh, I got a reminder. Whatever, it was free, so what do I care? And so there's really no rush or urgency to complete it, especially if no one is rushing you. If your job doesn't require you to do it, then why rush to do it? So when you have, if it's not mandated by law or policy, or for your continuing education credits, or if it's not because you paid for it, then there's no going to be no rush for it. But when you have those two things, for example, yeah, there's going to be a rush to complete it within that time frame.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's valuable to bake in some incentives and some time, just like we do with in our classrooms in the
Yeah.
university, right? Right,
Yes.
we time things and we bake in incentives and
Yeah.
reasons for people to do it and to complete it.
Yeah.
So, one of the things we talked about entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial mindset training. One of the aspects of entrepreneurship that you brought up was, that it takes a lot of mental toughness. And of course, it's hard work. But that mental toughness, and the ability to remain resilient and to, work beyond failure is really what sets successful entrepreneurs apart from those who don't succeed. Do you have any thoughts about how we can help people build resilience and how we can provide education around this idea of failure and how to cope with and use failure to our benefit?
Yeah, there's a number of ways. First, I would suggest check out my YouTube channel, Dr. J Real Talk, where I give some videos on that. But it's one of those things that resilience is very difficult to train or teach someone, because it has to come within them. Like, life circumstances will give you those challenges, and whether or not you succeed is up to you. And I take it to the extreme, because I always, to me, the way that I've been built and wired to myself is like, other than my family and instilling these values. Like, if I don't get this done, like there's a bullet, there's a gun in my head, and it's gonna the trigger's gonna pull if I don't get this. Like, that's extreme to me. But I think, and that's like, this is the way that I need have to build resilience, and to move forward, because I always look at myself like there's abundance of opportunities that I have, and I'm not going to let it go to waste, because I also listen to elders, and they always say, I regret this, I regret that. So for someone who is in that, like, I don't know, I'm trying to build it, like, go listen to elders who are like 40, 50 years older than you, and they'll tell you what they regret the most. And so listen to them, and you don't want to sit in that phase like 40, 50 years from now regretting that you didn't take the advantage of it. Of course, circumstances and just the circumstances will always come up. Like, there's going to be challenges at every step of the way. And there's just no way around it. That's why so few people are so successful, because they've been able to push beyond those boundaries. And you just have to push yourself. Like, you just have to find that internal locus of control, which is part of the entrepreneurial mindset, and just push yourself to succeed, and just do little small steps one at a time. I think people think that you have to take huge steps and huge mindset goals. Like, take little steps at a time, build little habits one step at a time. Like, it's just the small steps that add up that will eventually accomplish you to your goal. And so that's why I said, like, if you don't know how to start, just do small steps, right? Just do little things at one time, and then take it from there. But uh yeah, you just have to build it within yourself. You can listen to people, but at the end of the day, like, it just has to come from you. And just see. And I would not just necessarily the entrepreneur mindset profile assessment, but there's other assessments as well, that which, that we can name off. Just take some type of assessment to see where you're at. Like, what are your strengths and weak, like, take an assessment first of all to see where you're at. What are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and what do you want to work on? And then from there, take the next step.
Yeah, I think most people love assessments too, don't they?
Yeah.
I just recently retook I've taken the DISC and a number of different assessments myself. And I recently took the Big Five personality, which was kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned storytelling, because I'm a big fan, obviously. I mean, that's what my podcast is all about too. It's the stories that everybody has. And you're right. Somebody else's story can't do it for you, but it does remind us that we're not alone out there.
Mhm.
That the pathway to success is going to have failure. And interestingly, I found that most people who have been successful and reached their goals love to tell their failure stories. They love to talk about it
Mhm.
because that's where they learn the most.
Yes.
Yeah. So to learn, you've got to live, and to live, you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes, and
Yeah.
that entrepreneurial mindset. I was very blessed because my mom told me from a young age that if I didn't make any mistakes, I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So she gave me permission right away. And I know not everybody has been given permission either by themselves or the other people around them to fail, but
Yeah.
we have to give ourselves permission to mess up every now and then, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're never going to take any risks. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of entrepreneurship is about taking a risk. So, I love what you're doing, Jay. I think this is LearnGenix sounds like a great company that's really just getting started. And I think in today's environment, with remote workforce growing and people feeling kind of on their own out there, especially with remote work, that training is going to become even more important, I think, for a lot of companies. Are you seeing that reflected with companies that you talk to have remote workforces?
I haven't really necessarily um, been working with too many companies, or companies that have that kind of remote workforce. But I know I keep seeing in the news about remote being phased out. People want to come in. They want you to come into the office more. So that right now is something to wait and see what's going to happen 3 years from now, because of course we had the pandemic, and we thought that remote work was here to stay forever. And all of a sudden, the last year or so, you start seeing a lot of companies making their employees come back into the office 1 day a week, 3 days a week, and now some of them 5 days a week to keep their job. And so the challenge will be is like, how do you get the best out of I think the challenges for remote work will be two things. One, can they actually, get their job done to the best of their ability compared to someone who's in the office all the time, which will be interesting. And will how will a remote worker be given leadership opportunities when they're not there? So that will be the two challenges to see. And that's of course different, something different dynamics. That's more just internally for a leadership perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see, and I think hybrid is where we are right now, but it'll be interesting. Remote has its advantages because you can have people live anywhere, and so you can get some of the best and the brightest. On the other hand, as you pointed out, they're finding that remote workers often get overlooked when
Yeah,
it comes to advancing in the company. So
yeah,
well, this has been a great conversation, Jay. I've really enjoyed it. I know that that you have a lot of exciting things that you're working on, and before we close, I'd like to give you a chance to share all of that. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, if you had one piece of advice you could leave with our listeners, knowing it's aspiring and practicing entrepreneurs, what would that be?
ooh, great question. I would say the piece of advice I would give you is you have to be the best ever cheerleader to yourself more than anybody else in the world, because at the end of the day, everybody's got their own thing, and the only person that's going to push you to your limits or to what you want to succeed is yourself. And so you have to celebrate the small victories every single day. Look at yourself in the mirror and accept yourself and just keep pushing yourself forward, because at the end of the day, it's you versus you, and you have to push yourself because no one else is going to do it. Not your mom, not your dad, not your spouse, not your kids, whoever. They'll applaud you when you finish they'll applaud you when you're at the finish line, but before you get to the finish line, they're not going to care most of the time, even though we want them to. So you're going to have to push yourself. So be the best cheerleader you can be to yourself, and and just continue pushing forward.
That's great advice. We have to dig deep, right,
Yes.
and support ourselves and to get where we want to go.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, how can our listeners find out more about the products and things that you do with LearnGenics, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so thank you, Rebecca, for that. So they can go to www.learngenics.com and click on courses and continuing education. You can go there, check out the course. You can use code LEARN10 to get a discount on that. You can definitely go there. You can also check out my YouTube channel, Dr. J Real Talk, for that. So those are the two main things I would say to check this out. And of course, if you're a business owner or small, medium, or large, definitely interested in talking to you about training courses for your company, or if you want to take the entrepreneurial mindset profile assessment as well for your employees. Anything else that LearnGenics can provide, whether a new LMS system, definitely check out learngenics.com and we can get the conversation going.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about entrepreneurship, we would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of InFactor.